This brings us to the Fowling scene, and what we see here is a man by the name of Nebaum, Nebamn, who's a scribe and a counter of grain, which we can assume means he's an accountant. And according to the inscription, we're seeing his form of recreation in the afterlife. And in fact, we've seen a scene like this before when we saw T on a hippopotamus hunt from the Old Kingdom. So instead of seeing that low relief carving like we saw in the Old Kingdom, this is just painted on the wall. This is fresco. And we see a few things. First of all, he's taking an active role. He's actively hunting. He's also taking a stride forward, which gives us a sense of action and a sense that he's doing something as part of this hunt instead of having servants doing it for him. Awkwardly beneath him is his daughter. I'm not sure why she's sitting there kneeling beneath his loincloth, but she is. And she's picking a lotus flower from the Nile River. Now, with the daughter and wife accompanying him, this means that domesticity is becoming a more important aspect of Egyptian life. Instead of living individually, it indicates that he expects to spend his afterlife with his wife and daughter. And his cat is rather malicious. Now, this is why you shouldn't allow cats outdoors. They kill things, birds. I imagine every cat that goes outside at night looks like this 3 or 4 times, with a bird in its mouth, a couple in its front paw, one in its back paw. It's really tricky. But when we look at it, we also see a very conventional Egyptian pose, that head in profile, the chest turned towards us, the hips in profile, and the legs in profile. Again, looking at each of those individual parts and creating the most recognizable form. The animals are also in profile, but you'll notice they're very naturalistic. There's a lot of detail going on here. And this is painted in what's called dry fresco. In other words, the plaster was allowed to dry before this was painted. The advantage of this is you can take as much time as you want. The disadvantage is a lot of times these paintings basically self-destruct as soon as we open the tombs, as I've talked about before. Now, from the same tomb, we also see the musicians and dancers. And this is very different from anything we've dealt with before. Here we have 4 noble women participating by creating music, and we have 2 female performers. And as we look at it, we see something different. Suddenly, these 2 female performers, the first 2, are actually facing us. And when we look at their pose, not only are they facing us, but their hands are facing us here in a very complex position. Now, this is adding a sense of realism. Suddenly, the Egyptians are breaking away from that classic model. And with the female dancers, you notice their chest is seen in profile along with the rest of their body. It's creating a sense of consistency, of realism in this depiction. Now, what you're actually seeing is a feast for honoring the dead. It's basically a funeral. And this giant pile of stuff over on the right is all offerings to the dead Nebaum, our dead accountant. And it includes things like wine, wheat, other foods, and that sort of thing. And the idea here is to show off your wealth even in death, because they say that you can't be buried with your money, but the Egyptians quite literally do that. They will bury you with all sorts of resources to show off how well off you were, that we're able to take that extra stuff and put it in the ground and not worry about it. We see overlapping in this image, which gives us a sense of depth, especially in our dancers. And we see a sense of informality that we haven't seen from the Egyptians. as well as this very luxurious life of the Egyptian nobility. Remember, Nebaum is not your average person. He's basically an accountant and a very important person to the pharaoh, to the court. So he's well up that social ladder.